Breaking news, you're looking at a live shot of Kyiv in Ukraine. It's after midnight there as all eyes of the world gaze upon Ukraine. But here's what we know. Russian President Vladimir Putin, trying to fulfill a decades-long dream of rebuilding the Soviet Union, has launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Reports still coming in about casualties on both sides. We know that Russia has destroyed Ukrainian military facilities and air bases. There are four main areas Russia is attacking, but this one was most surprising. Putin attacked Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine. This is the thing, folks. Of course, our hearts and minds are with Ukrainian people today. We support Ukraine as a democracy, as we support all democracies around the world. But this war is unique. This was not just about an unhinged man attacking a country at will. There's a complicated history in Eastern Europe. The people who live in Ukraine are not Russians, despite what Putin wants you to believe. But to Putin, this land is vital in recreating the glory of the Soviet Union. So the question is this: what are the U.S. and NATO supposed to do? That world intervention is thrown around a lot these days, and today especially, but what would that look like? What should that look like? Remember, we only just pulled out of Afghanistan, and disastrously so at that. And that was a very clear mission: protecting Afghanistan from the evil terrorists that make up the Taliban. But also remember this: Russia is arguably the world's foremost nuclear power. And this man, Vladimir Putin, is the one with his finger on the nuke button. Is it worth sacrificing U.S. lives if it escalates? And what could we possibly gain by committing troops to Ukraine? Which brings us to this: oil. Brent crude is just under $100 a barrel. It was $110 this morning, though. The morning, $105 a barrel for U.S. crude oil as well. And we told you yesterday, in the 24 hours after Putin started his invasion of Ukraine, America, together with the EU and the UK, bought a combined 3.5 million barrels of Russian oil and refined products. We're still buying their oil. So in the day after this madman started invading, we lined Putin's pockets with more than $350 million in a single day. This problem could be solved by ending our dependence on foreign oil, reigniting the Keystone Pipeline, and giving thousands of Americans their jobs back. So how is Joe Biden responding?
Forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power.
The leader of the free world, folks, the commander-in-chief, God help us. Biden's still saying he won't send U.S. troops into battle today, announcing that he will deploy more troops to Germany and allied NATO countries, but his actions, his mere presence, have nothing to do to stop Putin's invasions. Will sanctions help? By the looks of it, maybe. Not sure. Certainly not the ones he's suggested today. And he said today it will take a while for these sanctions to hurt Russia. But I know this, and we can all agree: I don't want to see any more Americans die in a war we shouldn't have. We shouldn't have been a part of anyway. On a personal note, my executive producer, his son is in the U.S. Army, a soldier sent to Poland on standby. We wish him and all of his fellow men and women in arms safe returns. And we still await the strong leadership at the top. So we so crave and we so need right now in this dark moment for Ukraine. Okay, let's bring in South Carolina Senator, my senator, in fact, Lindsey Graham, to react on what's been happening in Ukraine. Senator, thank you for taking time. I know you're in between flights. You're a very, very busy man. Appreciate your time here. So let me just get right to it. You know, we've been talking all 15 hours about this bombing that Ukraine is taking from, a pounding taking from Russia. You know, what I really wanted to talk to you about, sir, you've been doing this a long time. You know these actors. You know Vladimir Putin. When he came out and he said that anyone who gets involved with this, anyone who stops whatever aggression he's got in mind, will experience consequences like you've never seen before. Sir, to you, U.S. Senator, long time, very, very well, knows about the military, knows what he's doing here. What does that mean to the Western world?
Well, he's trying to intimidate people, and that's what bullies do. But, Eric, at the end of the day, the Russian economy is the size of Italy. It depends on oil and gas. We could crush it. Now, why didn't this happen on Trump's watch? I had breakfast with President Trump this morning, and he said he told Putin he wanted a good relationship. But if you go into Ukraine, I can't have a good relationship with you, and you don't want to do that. He told Xi in China, I want a good relationship with you, but you got to stop cheating us. And if you try to take Taiwan, I can't have a good relationship with you. And they were afraid of him. So here's what I would do if I was Biden. I would make Putin the target of an effort to hold him accountable for the money he has stole from the Russian people. They say he may be worth up to $100 billion. Well, how did he get that money? He stole it from Russia. All of his buddies that have apartments and yachts, I would start taking them and looking at putting them in jail. I would restrict travel to Russia. I would treat Russia as an extreme case of COVID and isolate it. So I would push back on that comment.
Sir, I think you tweeted that you would consider Vladimir Putin a war criminal. What does that mean?
It means that he's a war criminal. It means that he went into Ukraine, a sovereign nation, and started killing people by force of arms. He invaded a sovereign nation against all legal norms. He's indiscriminately killing civilians. In 1994, the Ukraine, after the fall of the Soviet Union, became an independent nation. They had the third largest nuclear force in the world. They gave up their nukes to Russia with the promise that Russia would guarantee their sovereignty and not invade them. Britain, United States, and Russia signed that agreement. So Putin tore it up like Hitler did, and he needs to pay a price. The Minsk agreement about Crimea, he's violated. So he's a war criminal, but he's a crook and he's a thug, and we need to go after him personally.
You know, Senator, you said you were having breakfast with President Trump, former President Trump, this morning, and I assume pre-market, we're watching the markets fall apart. At one point, literally, the market down 800, 900 points. Oil, and this is what I really want to get at, oil is spiking, $110 a barrel for the North Sea Brent, which is what is very, very important to Europe. We have West Texas Intermediate here in the United States, but North Sea Brent, $110 a barrel. That's $500 billion a year revenue to Putin. What are we going to do about that? What should we do? What's your recommendation?
So we talked about that, Eric. I was sitting with the president, and we were watching the stock market crash in front of our eyes. And he said, we can help the American consumer by turning on the Keystone Pipeline, by going after oil and gas that we own. We're sitting on top of very large oil and gas deposits. We need to extract it in a sound way. I don't think Biden can do that because of the left. So one way to hurt Putin is to go all in on energy independence, call the Arabs up and say, you're going to start producing and make a run toward energy independence by turning on oil and gas here, sending over to our allies, be good business for us, and it would hurt Putin more than anything else.
You know, Senator, one of the big fallouts here for me, I'm watching this from the sidelines, and I'm concerned that President Xi in China is going to use this, with Putin's aggression into Ukraine, as a means or an opening or an opportunity for him to do the same thing in Taiwan. We've known he's wanted to, and it was very curious that where world leaders were condemning what Putin had done in Ukraine, China stayed very silent. Almost, I think their comment was something like, that's something not for us to worry about, meaning, I guess, they may have the eyes on the prize of Taiwan as well and expect Russia's Putin to look the other way if they choose to do that. Is that a big concern for you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good analysis. I think they probably got a secret handshake here. You don't give me a hard time with Ukraine, I won't give you a hard time about Taiwan, between Russia and China. And again, President Trump made it clear to both leaders, if you go down the road of Taiwan and China and Russia and Ukraine, I can't help you and I'll be your worst nightmare. So here's the problem. How Ukraine ends determines what China will do with Taiwan. Taiwan is the largest manufacturer of semiconductor chips in the entire world. So our whole high-end economy depends on chips. Do you really want China to own the entire chip market? Israel is in the crosshairs of a radical regime in Iran. If they get a nuclear weapon, Israel will have to respond. They can't let that ever happen. I think Israel would use a nuclear weapon to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and we could have the whole world in flames here if we don't watch it. So how we deal with Putin really matters. I'm watching China like a hawk, and I'm watching Iran. Israel's worried to death. I spent 3 days there, Eric, on the ground. So I don't want war, but the best way to prevent a war is to make sure that people who are provocative and who are aggressive understand they don't want to get in a fight with you. Biden has failed miserably in deterring Putin. I worry about China. I worry about Iran. So we got to speak with one voice as the world. I want to help the President Biden where I can, but we got to go after Putin hard. We got to isolate Russia, and we got to keep our eye on China and Iran. We should help the Israelis by sending refueling tankers to Israel, so in case they did have to do anything with Iran, they'd have the capability to keep their planes up in the air.
Yeah, and I know I got to let you go, Senator, but it's just one thing to point out to our audience. Within the last 6 days or so, China and Russia inked a 100 million metric ton coal deal. 100 million metric tons that Russia is selling to China for a whole lot of money. So Russia may have some change in their pocket to play around. That could be a big reason why China's keeping quiet on this.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. And for all the climate change people, well, if you can't think of a reason to get mad at China and Russia, they're selling coal like crazy. So the bottom line is we live in a dangerous world. Leadership matters. President Trump showed us what would work. President Biden, if he doesn't change his game and up his game, we're all in trouble. Insanity has continued doing the same thing, expecting different results. So we got to change our policies quickly against Putin. So, China and Iran don't get out of the box any more than they are. Thanks for having me. Pray for our folks in Ukraine.